everyone. Welcome to another episode of Nonprofit Fundamentals. I'm Adam, joined alongside with April, and today I'm on this side of the table. So we're here today to talk about financial resilience and particularly about post-COVID. So we're now several years past the whole pandemic, which was a major shift in a lot of different aspects for everyone. And it really opened up a lot of eyes to how things could easily go sideways and what steps you really need to take and what steps you should really consider so you can better manage future uncertainty, whether that's economic uncertainty or something else that will cause financial hardship to your organization.
So COVID exposed a lot of things. I think it's that a lot of nonprofits didn't have a lot of reserves, or maybe some nonprofits didn't have a good handle on their finances and which programs were more profitable and less profitable, and where to make shifts in case there were any changes in funding. So when COVID happened and everybody needed to work from home and there was a lot of shutdowns, the question became then of how much cash and reserves do we have? How are we going to make payroll? And so at that point, a lot of organizations were really scrambling to try to figure out how to meet the bills, how to pay the payroll, and really just having an overall shift. The focus really became on cash flow, I think.
Mm-hmm. So let's go over, I guess, some of those lessons that we've learned since then. So I think one big area we'll start off with is your operating reserves. So this amount of cash or investments that you have in the bank or in your brokerage accounts that you have essentially for a rainy day. It's your rainy day fund. And for a lot of nonprofits who are primarily funded through cost reimbursement grants, operating reserves are not always something easy to really compile because your funding sources are basically saying they need to be used for these certain areas and doesn't give you much room to build up that reserve. I think with COVID, that really showed the need to really have that operating reserve. So even if your funding does not necessarily allow you to create that, it just increases the need to diversify your funding streams and find other sources of revenue to really create that reserve, because you need that cushion in case something goes sideways. Can you make payroll tomorrow if your funding gets cut? You need to start considering these different areas, and that reserve will give you some leeway to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. And what's the most recommended or most common amount of reserves you usually see?
So usually they say anywhere between 3 to 6 months is really where it's a good number for nonprofits. Now more than that, great. Less than that, you probably want to start having some conversations with your board, with your development team, and start creating a plan on how can we find new contributions, new grants. How can we fundraise to get to an area where we have that reserve that we need?
Mm-hmm. I think another key thing to the reserves is they have to be unrestricted dollars.
Yes.
So you could raise contributions and have them restricted for certain purposes. You want to make sure you still comply with those purposes, that you're not going to use it for general operations if it's not allowed, if that's not the donor intent. So they really do have to be unrestricted reserves.
Mm-hmm. And like we said, that's just give you that cushion you need to kind of weather the storm, give you time to create a plan, and then follow through with that plan. Mm-hmm. So another area that really kind of opened everyone's eyes, and this is an area that people talked about for a while, but I think COVID really just opened the door for everyone to see the need to diversify your funding streams. You really can't be reliant anymore on one type of funding source. That just puts you in a higher risk in case something occurs where, let's say, you are primarily funded through private contributions from individuals, and then there's economic uncertainty, and that cuts people's giving. They don't give as much. Now what do? It's very hard to pivot when you haven't already started making the moves to make that pivot. So when you're already flat-footed, it's hard to then start making the moves to make that additional funding streams, because there is a runway until you can really accomplish that.
On the accounting and audit side, we always look to that in the financial statements is disclosing if you have a significant concentration on a funder, because it is important that if that funder wasn't funding you anymore, you then would have a very different looking financial statement.
Yeah. So just another area, you want to start making those investments now to diversify your funding when there's not an emergency. So if that time comes, you're then better prepared for it.
And then, really analyzing all of your programs and your grants and your funders and coming up with that plan, right? A little bit of that strategic planning and scenario planning is, if this program was cut, what would we do? If funding from this source was cut, what would we do? So in some situations, the grant may be smaller, and you may find yourself needing to only cut some of the direct program people. If your grant is much larger, you may find yourself having to make more cuts in order to sustain the organization. So just really understanding, what would you do in certain situations?
And that's a good point. Scenario planning is definitely should be a bigger focus. And not just during bad times or hardships. You really want to scenario plan throughout, just because it just gives you valuable information and different plans and strategies in case something was to occur. So if you were to scenario plan and say, all right, we are unfortunately 100% government funded, so you haven't diversified. What happens tomorrow if that funding gets cut by 50%? What do? You don't want to be in a position where if that day was to occur, you're now trying to figure that out. You want to be in a position where you've already planned that out, hopefully with your board as well, involved in that discussion on what steps you will take if that was to occur, and then if that was to occur, now you can execute on that plan.
It's also part of your mitigating your risks as an organization, I think.
That's true. Good point.
Great.
And then, one other area I guess we should point out is that during COVID, it was a time of you need rapid information. You need information now. You need it fast. You need to be accurate because the situation was evolving and changing, maybe almost every day. So with that, you need good systems in place, good processes in place to really ensure that you're getting up-to-date, accurate information to make the most educated and most your best decisions based on the current circumstances.
Yeah, really having the right programs in place, the up-to-date financial information, cash flow projections, forecasts, especially with COVID, right? It was, okay, I have X amount of reserves, how many payrolls can I meet before I start to have an issue? Being able to get that information quickly was really important.
Yeah. So all these areas really just all surround financial resilience. How can you ensure your organization's financially resilient to future, I don't want to say future COVIDs, but just future uncertainty, I think is the way to look at it. How can you weather the storm and manage and get through whatever is coming up ahead?
Right, so some of these strategies was building your reserves, diversifying some of your revenue and your funding sources, making sure that your programs, your softwares, your financial information is at your fingertips if you need it and accurate. So these are just some strategies toward financial resilience.
And the most important, but scenario planning. Definitely want to plan for different scenarios.
Yep.
Any closing thoughts?
No, I think easier said than done.
Oh yeah.
But something to really consider. I think it's important for an organization.
Definitely easier said than done. So, unfortunately, this is the easy part. Just talking about it, actually doing it, and executing, that is a whole other ball game. But it's a necessary action.
So, well, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.